coming to Stirling, like most tourist towns, there's an abundance of historical figures and mythic figures that you can deal with. Here, obviously, we have the Stuarts with Stirling Castle over yonder. We've got Bruce, we've got Wallace. What's always attracted me were the odd characters, the incidental characters. John Cowan, whose money paid for the Guildhall here, who, according to legend, a randy merchant in spirit form, he rises from the grave on Hogmanay, fittingly enough for this broadcast, inhabits the statue of him that stands over the doorway, leaps from the plinth and dances through the towns searching for female company. Old habits die hard for politicians. Or the character I've been associated with in Stirling for the past 30 years, Jock Rankin, according to William Drysdale, the historian, Stirling's last hangman who choked to death on a chicken bone. He wasn't the last, he didn't choke to death, he was fired for being a drunk. But he's a fascinating character, and the tales that are connected to him, rather like Cowan, are one of the reasons that I'm attracted to those characters. You have the history on one side, you have the mythology which has grown up around them on the other. And in interpreting history, you see where the two converge or contrast. And that can be a fascinating way of learning about the values, the mores and the morals of a town. The history we create for ourselves is often far more revealing than any number of dates or names. Names and dates historically are bookmarks. Ideas and notions, characters are what tell us about a town.
Could you tell us a wee bit more about Jock, please, David?
Well, Jock is a peculiar character. He's the son of an Ayrshire executioner, clearly went into the family business. He disappears from the historical record for about 20 years, and in Admiralty records, John Rankin from Ayr is arrested by the British Navy on a couple of occasions for attacking slave ships. But by the time he turns up here in the 1760s, thereabouts, he has clearly changed character. He's not just a hangman, he's a very bad hangman. He's eventually sacked for his wife, Tibby Cocker, Isabella Colconquer, as she was known, but the locals couldn't understand her Irish accent, so Isabella became Tibby. Robbing one of their neighbours' cellars with a friend, he had to whip her through the town, but unable to control his own household, they sacked him for keeping a bad hoose. He was given 8 shillings and 6pence, put on a coach to Glasgow and told never to come back. But the town disliked him so much that they preferred the story that he'd choked to death on a chicken bone, which, let's face it, is a soupçon too much of dramatic irony. It's too much of a storytelling. And he becomes famous in the 19th century through the great raconteur and local historian William Drysdale, author of the wonderfully titled Old Faces, Old Places and Old Stories of Stirling, who gets most of his facts terribly wrong, but is so enthusiastic in his tale-telling that he's a great source for somebody like me to go to see a story about him, about Blind Alec, about Tambone, Bumming Jamie, all sorts of peculiar characters. I've never looked into why Bumming Jamie is called Bumming Jamie, though I think it's because he borrowed things rather than anything else, thankfully. But as long as you check the facts with Drysdale, he's a great source.